I'm Eriksson. So here we are in South Africa. We are just outside Cape Town in the little town of Somerset West. And we're at the studio here of the artist Lionel Smit. And we're here to find out about his art and his own language, where he combines figurative art with abstract, colorful paintings and creating his own universe of art. If you were to explain for somebody that's never seen your art at all, what would you say?
In particularly the paintings, it's definitely an amalgamation of different things that kind of like came together. I think the idea of abstraction that I really enjoy, and also the fact that it's still naturalistically, identifiably a figure or a face. So I think it's things that kind of like influenced me when I was younger. I really like abstract painting, but I also like the technical ability that, you know, the Renaissance had, for instance. And, you know, apart from that, also very, you know, sometimes very colorful, and combining those two techniques is kind of like what my work evolved in. And in the sculpture sense as well, it comes more from the painting background. You know, I used to sculpt, and then I broke away from that and started painting, you know. I think I wanted to become an artist in my own right, you know, not the same as my father. Then when I started sculpting again, I already established myself as a painter. So those elements of the abstraction and the naturalistic that are combined also come through in the sculpture works as well, you know, like the clay becomes like swathes of paint, and then it crosses over where the paint almost feels like I'm sculpting with it again.
What do you think is the trigger for you in art? What makes you tick?
And I think that idea of creating something out of nothing appealed to me, but why I'm doing it is quite a mystery, you know. I think art is something that opens a different doorway or a different way of seeing things, which we don't necessarily need to understand.
Finding your own language in art, creating your own universe, how did you go about to do that if you look over a period, say 10 years?
I think it all started with moving to Cape Town from Pretoria. I think my work, you know, had a big change in it, which slowly started happening. But then, you know, once I moved here, the subjects and the people that I encountered were different people. They weren't, you know, African mostly, or only white and black. It was, there was an element of cultural diversity within one person. That's definitely when I started using the idea of the Cape Malay as a symbol of a universal person, you know, that has a connection to all of us, maybe not from a very nice history, but the point is it's there. And, you know, the influences of European, African and Asian bloodlines.
Using your own language to tell your stories. You're a very strong storyteller, I think. Those stories that you are telling, where do you find them?
I think, you know, this is also something that I inherently do. It's not something that I might ponder about forever. I think it's part of that process of creation. I think that process is a very important part to telling a story, because you are sometimes hearing the story for the first time yourself, you know, as an artist. And not that it would always be a complete literal and verbal story, but maybe an emotional story, emotional journey that takes you on. So I think, you know, they develop in the studio as you work on things, and as I develop concepts, you know, I start with one thing that starts growing into something else, and that story evolves in that creative process, you know, through the experimentation, the playing, these different things start popping up. And then once you get to that level, that story starts telling different stories.
I can see very clearly on your artwork and the title of your work that there is a true story behind each painting.
Yeah, yeah.
And you also, in many of your sculptures and paintings, there are often a communication with two persons. What's the story behind that?
So the idea behind these double images that I started using is that I became quite influenced on an abstract level with the Rorschach test. These abstract images become psychoanalysis cards that people use to, you know, somehow place themselves in a... I started taking papers and, you know, making my own ink blotches out of them, and then thought, wow, I think if I have images that are kind of like start duplicating, it starts telling a complete different story. And these, which became more of an abstract form of two things combined. And then that's where the story and the ideas begin. So you're almost creating the idea of taking a Cape Malay woman in this duet or double image is actually a person that are very different things in one, combined in one, you know, different cultures and different bloodlines, but they're still, you know, part of one thing. So, and then once I start doing that and I start translating it into sculpture, the concept completely changed. So accidentally I discovered this with these double images. Once I started creating a sculpture with double heads, it changed the context, because now, which I didn't realize, there are relationships with mythological Roman sculptures like the Janus head, which is a double head looking out. And it's funny how, though that concept kind of like intertwined with this sculpture that I made, that I had placed in Union Square, New York for about a year. So the idea that, you know, there are various different ideas with these mythological images, but that the one head looks into the future and the other head looks into the past. And I thought, doing this with a Cape Malay woman, that's a sculpture of mine, almost it echoes the idea of who are we as people, how have we evolved.
Using the Janus head, the god, the Roman god, that could look into the past, but also could look into the future. If you place yourself in that situation yourself and look into the future, where are you going?
You know, I tend to be able to get obsessed with subject matters, you know, and keep, you know, for instance, the iconography that I've created, you know, I keep returning back to that in some form or way. And I think the different processes that I've started using with silk screening on paper has definitely come through into my painting, where I've started using a lot more silk screen and, you know, kind of like these, you know, popular art elements that, you know, used to be popular like 50 years ago or whatever. And I find that quite fascinating, to not know exactly where I'm going, but to know it should be fresh, you know. And I think that's sometimes how I approach work, you know. I don't always want to know exactly how the end product must look, because then it's just trying to, you know, you've got an end goal and you have to paint something or sculpt something that looks like that. But if you open up your boundaries a bit and you don't really know what you're making, that's when you start discovering, I think.
Now you have established yourself as one of Africa or South Africa's top artists. You're exhibiting not only in Africa, also in Europe, Finland, and now recently also in the US. And you sell your work all over. You work in paintings, bronze, drawing, silk screening. Where will you go from now?
I think at some point you want to see yourself as an artist, having different mediums to work in, not necessarily be labeled as only a painter or only a sculptor or only this. So I've been delving into video work as well. So I've done some shows where I have projections of video work that I've done. And through that process, you know, I taught myself how to shoot and how to edit and things, because I really want to have full control of that. So that has opened up a whole new avenue of things that might not even be related to my art, but becoming maybe a movie director or something, where that completely opens things up into a different realm, which I find fascinating.
If you were to give an advice to a young person that wants to become an artist like yourself, what would you say?
I think if you find something that you're really passionate about, focus on that and be persistent, and usually something good comes out on the other side.